The Prodigies War. Chapter 1. Youngster Lin Soon. The Xiao Empire's southwest border. Mountains grew from the ground like weeds, with their peaks packed together like trees in a forest. This land had been known as the 3,000 Great Mountains at heaven's border since ancient times. The setting sun bathed the land with a gentle, rosy afterglow. In the far distance, trails of smoke rose in the air. Lin Soon's eyes brightened. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and released a long, drawn-out breath. Finally found a place with people. He had been trekking through this inhospitable land for 7 days, camping out in the open and foraging fruits for food. He had experienced numerous dangers and challenges along the way, even nearly losing his life to wild beasts several times. When Lin Soon finally discovered a sign of life, his heart shook and he felt a surge of energy through his exhausted body. He continued to advance. Before long, a neat and orderly heath field appeared, further adding to Lin Soon's hopes. Since a field was being cultivated here, there was most likely a village nearby. The heath grains in the field were clearly about to ripen, each kernel round and heavy. A gust of wind blew past, making the green field ripple like water as the light scent of vegetation spread. Judging from their condition, the grains should be ready for harvest in about 10 days. What's this? Lin Soon seemed to have discovered something. He walked towards a stalk by the roadside and took a closer look. Sure enough, he found that although the plant was growing well, there was a problem. The ground was moist, fertile, and not lacking in heath power. However, the heath grain stems showed faint signs of wilting that were not easy to observe unless one looked carefully. Lin Soon pulled out a stalk and inspected it up close in his hand. His fingertip gently peeled open the tender green surface, only for his pupils to shrink a moment later at what he saw. Numerous luminescent white worms could be seen inside the stalk, each as large as a grain of sand. They wiggled in the plant, feeding on its life force. Grain worms. This field was plagued by worms. If these grain worms weren't eliminated in time, the about-to-ripen field would begin to wilt and lose its heath power. When that happened, the harvest would be a disaster. In a worst-case scenario, not a single grain would be reaped. It seems that there is no rune master in the village. If not, such a disaster would not have been allowed to befall the nearly ripe heath grains. Lin Soon pondered before silently shaking his head. There was likely no rune master who would willingly live in such a god-forsaken place. After all, from what Lin Soon understood, a rune master was a very honorable profession in this world. Lin Soon suddenly heard a loud sigh. He turned his head to the source and saw a tall, well-built, middle-aged man nearby dressed in clothes made from animal skins. He was currently sitting by the edge of the field, dazedly staring at it as he sighed. The middle-aged, tanned man had a worried frown on his face, and he was clearly distressed. Something clicked in Lin Soon's head. He walked forward and asked, "Uncle, are you fretting over this field?" It seemed that the man had been stressing over this matter for a long time. As such, he immediately complained. "Arg, yeah. The wretched heavens. It's been a month since the last rainfall. If this weather continues, the 20 aries of heath grains I planted will be finished." However, when he turned around to look at Lin Soon, he blurted out in shock, "Little fellow, where did you come from?" The middle-aged man looked at the boy in front of him. Lin Sun was wearing a coarse hemp garment that had been washed until it had turned a faded white, while his face had a slightly pale and sickly complexion. There was an old and worn wooden box on his back. The middle-aged man did not know what was in the box, but its load seemed to place a considerable burden on the boy. The youth looked like he was somewhere between 12 and 13 years of age. It was honestly quite strange for a boy like this to suddenly arrive in Feiyun village. After all, there was nothing but wilderness in 1,000 miles radius around Feiyun village. Everywhere else was rugged mountains with zero signs of human inhabitation. From what the middle-aged man could remember, not a single stranger had come to the village in more than 10 years. As such, how could he not be baffled by the appearance of such a young and frail boy in his field? Lin Sun smiled. Uncle, who I am isn't important. What's important is that I can help you solve your problem. He knew that introducing himself would only draw more questions from the other party, wasting far too much time. Moreover, he was so hungry that he could barely walk. The middle-aged man jumped to his feet and said, "What did you say?" Lin Sun smiled again and repeated himself. "I said that I could help you solve this problem and make your subsequent harvest successful." The middle-aged man in beast skin clothes frowned. He carefully observed Lin Sun's young, pale and gaunt face as he suspiciously asked, "Young man, you're bragging, right?" The words from the frail and thin youngster were far too absurd. Lin Sun chuckled and pointed towards the stalk in his hand that had been peeled open earlier. "Take a look. Uncle, your ETH grains do not lack water but have been infected by worms. These worms are called grain worms and feed on the stalk of ETH grains. If they are not exterminated in time, your field will be ruined." These words alarmed and frightened the middle-aged man. He stared hard at the faintly glowing white worms and ground his teeth in anger. Damn it, no wonder nothing changed after using so much river water. These darn worms were the culprit. But his expression turned distressed as he tore his hair in frustration. "These pests are hiding inside the stem. I don't have any method to kill them." Lin Sun's eyes narrowed as he revealed a smile that was as bright as sunlight. The middle-aged man bitterly sighed for a long time. Suddenly, his eyes widened as he seemed to realize something and called out, "Young brother, since you recognize these pests, you must know a method to get rid of them, right?" Lin Sun nodded, his eyes gleaming with a sliver of confidence. "That's great." The middle-aged man's face flushed red with excitement. His initial suspicions towards Lin Sun had faded substantially upon seeing that the middle-aged man was now on board. Lin Sun took his chance. "Uncle, if I help you with this problem, could you promise me one thing?" The middle-aged man immediately replied without any hesitation. "As long as you help me with this matter, I can make you 10 promises, let alone one." However, he abruptly realized his words were too boastful and hurriedly corrected himself in a slightly embarrassed manner. "Of course. I'll only be able to help if it is within my means. There's nothing I can do if the request is beyond me." Lin Sun grinned. "My condition is simple. I wish to find a place to stay in the village." Tai Shan was startled. "You wish to live in Feiyun village?" Lin Sun nodded, his clear gaze indicating that he was not joking. His expression was completely serious when he needed to be, which was a habit he had acquired since he was young. Tai Shan hesitated as he awkwardly scratched his head. "Wait here. I'll go find the village chief and ask him. This matter is not something I can decide on, but I feel that it should not be an issue. He turned around and dashed towards the village without even waiting for a reply, giving off an aura of bubbling energy, swiftness and decisiveness. Lin Sun was speechless. He soon thought of another problem and hurriedly yelled, "Uncle, remember to bring back some food as well. I can't help if I have no energy." "Sure." Tai Shan's voice boomed from far away. What a simple and honest man. Lin Sun chuckled. He placed the tattered wooden box on the ground and massaged his aching shoulders. Subsequently, he turned around, walked into the field and began a careful inspection. Eth grain contained wisps of eth power and was a necessary food for cultivation. However, it was not an easy task to grow them. From the moment they were planted, one needed to constantly check for insect infestations and weeds, while also being on guard for potential weather issues. Once any problems occurred, the grain's quality would drop and might even result in a complete loss of eth power. This field, for example, had been infected by worms. If the worms were not exterminated, the outcome would be quite bleak. However, this was not a difficult problem for Lin Sun. Before long, Tai Shan returned from the village. However, he was now accompanied by a large group of villagers. The final rays of the setting sun dyed the mountains red as Tai Shan and the villagers arrived amidst a cloud of dust. Lin Sun was taken aback. He shrugged, knowing that the situation had changed. The Prodigies War. Chapter 2, Drawing Runes. Tai Shan. Where's the master you mentioned? Keep your voices down or you'll disturb the master. Even from a distance, he could hear a bunch of voices chattering loudly. They were filled with excitement and curiosity. Lin Sun glanced through the group before focusing on the elder leading them. The old man had white hair and a white beard. Although he was thin, he had a tall and sturdy figure, and each movement he made gave off a certain feeling of power. Eh? The tall elder came to an abrupt halt when he saw Lin Sun standing in the distance. The look of excitement on his face was quickly replaced by bewilderment. He had not expected the frail-looking boy in the distance to be the master mentioned by Tai Shan. Where's the master? Tai Shan. Where's the master you were talking about? Why is there only a young brat here? Skeptical looks appeared on the villagers' faces when they saw Lin Sun. Tai Shan was caught in an awkward spot and hurriedly said, "Everyone, the master is this young fellow." It might have been better if he had not explained because an uproar immediately erupted. What? You mean this beardless kid can help you achieve a good harvest? What nonsense. Haha. Tai Shan. Ah, Tai Shan. You've clearly been tricked by this cheeky brat. How can a 12-year-old kid be a master? Tai Shan. We're facing a crisis. How are you still in the mood to joke around? Some of the villagers were unhappy, while others let out mocking remarks. Some other people were full of doubts and another subset were just angry. It was basically a mess. Everyone was certain that Tai Shan had been tricked. After all, Lin Sun looked far too young, which was not helped by his gaunt and sickly pale face. It was difficult for the villagers to match this image to a master. Tai Shan was flustered. He awkwardly waved his arms as he hopped about. I didn't lie. We'll know whether this young man can help once he tries. Unfortunately, everyone felt that they had been tricked and had no intention of listening to his explanation. amidst the chaos. Lin Sun ignored the various looks and walked towards the tall elder. If my guess is correct, you are the village chief of Feiyun village. You're right. The tall elder nodded. His wise eyes observed Lin Sun without revealing any emotions. The old man was clearly not someone who would be easily flustered. Lin Sun asked, "Then will you agree to my condition?" The tall elder could sense that although the boy seemed young and immature, he had a confident and stable demeanor that did not match his age. This observation made the old man's heart stir. He nodded. "If you can accomplish what you promised, I will let you stay in Feiyun village." Several of the nearby villagers were stunned by these words. Soon after, they skeptically cried out one after another. "Village chief, you can't be seriously taking this little guy for real, right?" The tall old man displayed a charisma befitting of a village chief as he waved his hand. "In this world, how will we know if we never try?" Lin Sun chuckled, knowing that the matter was settled. He turned around and spoke to Tai Shan. "Uncle, did you remember to bring me some food?" Tai Shan hastily retrieved a big piece of dried meat and handed it over. In addition, he had also prepared a leather bag filled to the brim with water. Lin Sun did not waste any more time and began to ravenously dig in right next to the field. Although the meat did not contain much yeast power, the seasoning made it pretty tasty. The villagers could not help but laugh at Lin Sun devouring the food like a half-starved wolf as they grew increasingly doubtful. Could this little fellow be a food-scamming conman? Even Tai Shan could not help but feel dazed as a feeling of apprehension rose in his heart. If Lin Sun was a conman, Tai Shan would have made a humiliating mistake. Only the tall old man watched Lin Sun with kind eyes and a sliver of surprise. If this little fellow wasn't a fearless conman, it would mean that he was the real deal, regardless of which he was. Such a display of composure and confidence was already more than sufficient proof of his boldness. Lin Sun soon consumed the entire piece of meat, washing it all down till his stomach was also full of water. He felt better than he had in days. Tai Shan could not help but inquire, "Young brother, shouldn't you begin?" Lin Sun looked at the sky and casually replied, "Wait a bit." Time flowed as night began to surge from the horizon. Just as the crowd was growing impatient, the silent Lin Sun finally moved. He opened the old wooden box by his feet and retrieved an azure blade with seasoned movements before walking into the field. The blade was nearly 3 feet long and 3 fingers wide. The tall elder's eyes instantly narrowed. He could faintly sense a familiar presence from Lin Sun. The boy's confidence, concentration and calm were clearly different from the norm, and this began to tug out some vague memories buried deep in the old man's mind that had nearly been forgotten. The tall elder immediately waved his hand to quiet the grumbling villagers. "Stop being noisy and wait." His voice contained a hint of authority. All chatter instantly disappeared. Everyone looked towards Lin Sun with a tinge of skepticism in their eyes. Although they were now forbidden to speak, the villagers could still sign to each other with their eyes. They silently fanned out around the field to deny Lin Sun any opportunity of escaping. Lin Sun seemed oblivious to the slight change in atmosphere around him as he retrieved a thumb-sized broken golden bone that resembled a thong from his clothing. His right hand tightly gripped the handle and he exerted force through his wrist, causing a sharp scraping sound as the blade pushed across the broken golden bone. Faint golden powder drifted from the bone and landed on Lin Sun's ready palm. When his hand was covered in a thick layer of gold, He finally stopped and put away the broken golden bone. He took a deep breath and squatted on the ground. He then dabbed his finger on the golden powder and began to draw on the wet ground. At this distance, the villagers could clearly see everything he was doing. Lin Sun's young and slightly pale face was completely focused. His gaze was clear and calm as his finger left numerous complex strokes on the ground as if it was a calligraphy brush. His movements were natural and practiced, flowing with a natural grace akin to clouds floating through the air and water streaming across the ground. These villagers' eyes widened, and they didn't dare to blink as they watched Lin Sun's movements. Astonishment rose in their hearts when they saw faint golden symbols seeming to flow out of the ground. These symbols gave off a mysterious aura. Even the stupidest among them understood that Lin Sun was doing something that had completely surpassed their imaginations. The combination of Lin Sun's absorbed expression, his clean, proficient movements, and the rapidly growing golden pattern on the ground seemed to bathe him in a mysterious glow. The suspicions in villagers' hearts had imperceptibly vanished. Many of them were now convinced by the methods Lin Sun displayed. They might not have understood exactly what he was doing, but it did not stop them from being amazed by the beauty of his work. The tall elder's body shuddered unnoticeably as he had finally confirmed his suspicions. This frail-looking young boy was drawing a rune. The Prodigies War. Chapter 3: Light Drawing Rune. The ability to draw runes was the unique mark of a rune master. The tall elder, village chief Xiao Tianrun, naturally understood this. However, it had been many years since he had last seen a rune master, which was why he could not help but feel somewhat unsure when he first saw Lin Sun's movements. Rune. Could this weak-looking boy be a rune master? That couldn't be right. A true rune master was an extremely revered existence, an individual that possessed superior status even in highly populated cities. The youngster before them was merely a 13-year-old boy. His clothes were simple and shabby, an image that could never relate to the legendary rune masters. Xiao Tianrun took a deep breath to compose himself and continued to observe. He suddenly felt an irresistible curiosity towards Lin Sun, who was attentively working with practiced movements. Where had this stranger come from? Would he really be able to solve the worm infestation? Amidst the silent atmosphere, Lin Sun was bent over in the field as his finger continued to nimbly draw complex patterns on the wet and rich soil. His movements were akin to a dancing snake while also bold and unrestrained like a heavenly steed galloping in the sky. The villagers could not turn their eyes away. The doubt in their hearts gradually faded as a wisp of unexplainable expectation rose within them. Twilight passed and was replaced by the ink-black night. Bright stars emerged one after another, sprinkling their gentle glow onto the land. The cold moon hung in the sky like a silver saucer with silver moonlight spilling onto the ground. Lin Sun's finger suddenly paused before he added one final light stroke to the mysterious pattern on the ground. Om. The pattern made from golden powder abruptly lit up as if it had come alive. A beam of golden light shot straight towards the sky. The villagers' hearts shuddered and their pupils rapidly expanded as if they were mesmerized. All of their eyes were glued on the golden light that was soaring into the heavens. Amidst the darkness of the night, strands of dazzling silver moonlight began to surge down like the tide as if something was beckoning it. The moonlight pooled together at the end of the golden ray. More and more moonlight gathered, swirling in the sky like rippling water. The ethereal and holy beauty of the sight instantly took the villagers' breaths away. As people who had spent all their lives in Feiyun village, How could they possibly have experienced such magic? It was basically a miracle to them. Rumble. When the moonlight accumulated to a certain point, it suddenly fell with a loud rumble as if unable to bear its own weight. Hshhhhh. Moonlight poured down like a heavy rain, glowing with holy light as it followed the beam of golden light and descended upon the worm-infested field. The entire field was instantly enveloped by a layer of ethereal silver light, creating an exceptionally beautiful sight amidst the ink-like darkness of the night. Under the moonlight, the frail boy in the field seemed to gain a mysterious aura that garnered everyone's respect. The entire place was silent. The villagers were dumbstruck with their eyes and mouths wide open. Even village chief Xiao Tianren was no exception as his eyes were filled with amazement. However, Lin Sun's attention was not on them. After completing the task, he inwardly breathed a sigh of relief, his eyes finally relaxing as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He wiped his sweat-covered forehead and carefully exited the field. He had done what he could. All that was left was to see the result. Young man, you are quite something. Village chief Xiao Tianren had appeared beside Lin Sun without him noticing. The old man's eyes were filled with an unspoken emotion. Lin Sun chuckled. Elder's praise is misplaced. I merely used a gold-eating rat's essence bone powder to draw an elementary tier light drawing rune. It's honestly not even worth mentioning. Xiao Tianren was slightly surprised by Lin Sun's honesty as a sliver of undetectable admiration flashed in his eyes. Soon after, the elder nodded. Let's go. Lin Sun was taken aback. Where to? Xiao Tianren responded. To find you some accommodation, of course. From today, Feiyun village is your home and you may stay however long you wish. As he spoke, he turned around and began to leave with his hands behind his back, ignoring the changes that were happening to the field. This stunned Lin Sun. The elder had made the decision to accept him before waiting for this worm infestation affair to be settled. This honestly surprised Lin Sun. He smiled helplessly before quickly following without hesitation. Feiyun village was built along a mountain and appeared quiet and peaceful under the moon's glow. Xiao Tianren led Lin Sun to the end of the village where a rundown little residence sat. The place consisted of 3 thatched buildings and a courtyard. A willow stood at the center of the courtyard and was surrounded by a garden that was currently filled with weeds. The thatched houses had clearly been in disrepair for many years as they were covered in cobwebs and dust. Creak. Xiao Tianren pushed open the door and lit an oil lamp. Tangerine yellow light soon illuminated the dark room. It has been many years since someone last lived here. You may stay here for the time being. I will get some people to help you tidy up tomorrow. Lin Sun observed the room. Although simple, it had everything that was needed. Like a bed, chairs and tables. In fact, there was even a study desk by the window, on which a few dust-covered books were scattered around. Lin Sun cupped his hands together. Thank you. Elder, this place is great. No need to be courteous. Xiao Tianren looked at Lin Sun and said, Young man, it matters not where you came from or why you wish to stay in Feiyun village. Since you've become part of the village, you are naturally no longer an outsider. I hope that you will not do anything that will let the village down. Lin Sun smiled and nodded. Elder does not need to worry. Xiao Tianren patted Lin Sun's shoulder, turned around and left. After making sure that Xiao Tianren had left, Lin soon carefully placed the old and worn wooden box on the floor, resting it against the bed. He then pushed open the windows and dazedly gazed at the endless starry sky. Lin soon finally could not resist the urge to stretch his back and yawn after a long time. I've finally arrived at the Xiao Empire's border after 3 difficult months of trekking. Mr. Liu, if your spirit is here, please be at ease. I will do my best to live on like you wished. The 13-year-old youth in coarse hemp clothes leaned against the windowsill. His long hair was loosely tied in a ponytail behind him. Moonlight bathed his thin frame as sorrow flashed across his young and slightly pale face before quickly returning to its usual composed look. Outside the village, the sounds of cheering mixed with gasps of surprise could be heard in the distance. Lin soon listened as a smile involuntarily rose from the corners of his lips. He decided not to waste any more time and closed the window before returning to the bed. Under the dim lamplight, he opened the old and worn wooden box that had accompanied him for more than 10 years. Meanwhile, Tai Shan was squatting in his field. His face was overflowing with excitement and happiness. His lips trembled as he muttered to himself, "A miracle! It's a miracle! Those blasted worms are finally gone. God damn it! The heavens are watching after all." One of the villagers reminded him. "Old Tai. It's not the heavens but that young fellow's work." "Right." Tai Shan slapped his thighs and loudly exclaimed. "Didn't I say that he would never trick anyone? But you guys kept suspecting him of being a con man. You guys were so blind and muddle-headed." The nearby crowd of villagers felt too embarrassed to speak. How could they have imagined that such a frail, shabbily dressed 13-year-old youngster would be able to draw the moon's light to exterminate the worm infestation? The Prodigies War. Chapter 4 Mine Prison. Dusky yellow lamplight swayed in the simple straw house. The old wooden box was opened, revealing an azure blade, a yellowing book and a dark gray half-foot-long brush. Usually, a brush was a tool for drawing and writing. This brush resembled a calligraphy brush but had a sharp blade in place of the usual soft hairs. It was a necessary tool used by rune masters to carve runes. Hence, this brush was also known as a rune knife. Personally, Lin soon preferred the name rune knife because it sounded similar to Tao seeking. Who could vie with someone who sought the Tao in every land? This kind of name elicited an indescribable feeling of excitement. Lin Sun's gaze lingered on the yellowing book and the dark gray brush. These 2 items held extraordinary significance to him. The yellowing book was roughly 3 fingers thick and did not have a title. Its tattered pages were cut from leather and the book had clearly been made long ago. A mere glance at it would make anyone feel an ancient and historical aura. The dark gray brush was quite unique and resembled a sword more than a brush. Mysterious cloud-like patterns were etched into its dark, dull surface, and its bladed tip gave off a chilling aura that reached all the way into the depths of a person's soul. They were Lin Sun's 2 most important treasures. Besides the book, brush and blade, there were also bones, animal skins, dried plants, rocks and other similar items. These were ETH resources that could be crafted into special tools, made into rune ink, or used as rune materials. They had been collected by Lin Sun along his journey and could be sold for quite a tidy sum. In the corner of the wooden box sat a stack of thumb-sized wooden blocks that were as solid and hard as jade. These wooden blocks were called club moss silver wood and normally had little value. Their only unique quality was that they were extremely tough and as hard as rocks. As such, club moss silver wood was an ideal material for rune apprentices to practice their rune carving. Lin Sun carefully picked up the thick yellowing book and sat in front of the desk by the window. He silently gazed at the book but did not flip it open. Instead, he fell into deep thought. In the blink of an eye, Lin Sun seemed to return to the past. He recalled a mine prison full of prisoners that was isolated from the rest of the world in the mountains. Lin Sun had been in the prison for as long as he could remember. It was a place without sky or sunlight. Only darkness and dampness. The atmosphere was suffocating with prisoners dying and new ones arriving every day. In Lin Sun's memory, no one had ever managed to escape from the mine prison before it was destroyed. Strictly speaking, Lin Sun was not a prisoner but an orphan, who had nearly been eaten by the fiendish prisoners when he was found. That was what Mr. Liu had told him anyway. As for how an abandoned baby had survived, he had, of course, been saved by Mr. Liu. No one knew Mr. Liu's origins, but he had clearly received special treatment in the mine prison. Not only the guards, but even the prisoners were also extremely respectful towards him. It was all due to Mr. Liu's other identity, a rune master. Lin Sun had followed at Mr. Liu's side since young and had subsequently begun to help the latter with various chores once he was old enough. He became proficient at recognizing words and identifying various ingredients. In addition, he learned how to manufacture rune ink, practiced his rune carving and committed various types of runes to heart. He did all of this while also doing other mundane chores, such as preparing tea, serving water, washing clothes and cooking. Lin Sun had believed that he was Mr. Liu's disciple, a sentiment shared also by the guards and prisoners in the prison mine. However, Mr. Liu had never acknowledged Lin Sun as his disciple. In Mr. Liu's words, he did not plan on ever accepting a disciple, and Lin Sun was merely someone who was helping out with the chores. This statement had once made Lin Sun depressed for a bit, but the bad memory gradually faded with time. However, deep inside, he still treated Mr. Liu as his master. Life in the mine prison was very dry and monotonous with no sun to herald the arrival of each day. As Lin Sun grew older, he slowly began to realize that there was a wider world outside. When Lin Sun was 9, Mr. Liu brought him outside for the very first time. However, they returned a mere 3 days later. The experiences over these 3 days shocked Lin Sun tremendously. He had seen the outside world. Sunlight, the blue sky and the clean white clouds. From then on, Mr. Liu would take him out from time to time, though they would always return to mine prison within 3 to 10 days. Their goal for each trip was simple. Mr. Liu needed to collect more ETH resources for his runes. Every trip gradually increased Lin Sun's understanding of the world. The only thing that puzzled him was that Mr. Liu seemed to prefer to stay in the dark, sunless mine prison instead of the outside world. Regrettably, Lin Sun was never able to find the answer to that question, even when the mine prison was destroyed. At this thought, pain shot through Lin Sun's heart as the terrible memory from 3 months ago involuntarily filled his head. On that day, he had been engaging in greenwood rune carving practice, while Mr. Liu was mumbling to himself as he watched over a pot of boiling ETH ingredients. Outside the room, the guards whipped the less motivated prisoners with their bloody metal whips while a cacophony of curses, shouts and wails of agony echoed amidst the dark prison. This day was no different from any other. And it was a life which Lin Sun had already long grown accustomed to. In fact, he no longer felt any sympathy for those pitiful-looking but inwardly evil prisoners. The only strange thing about that day was Mr. Liu. Since young, Lin Sun had learned that Mr. Liu had a bad temper, often appearing irritable and impatient. Lin Sun had been verbally abused countless times by Mr. Liu and had long grown used to such treatment. Although Mr. Liu would scold and reprimand, he never hit Lin Sun. Moreover, the lectures were always due to Lin Sun's mistakes. On that day, Mr. Liu had been exceptionally irritable and had smashed numerous items in the room. Even his most beloved rune brush, Azure Sky Burning Gold, had been violently snapped into two by him. While Lin Sun was bewildered by such behavior, he saw Mr. Liu retrieve an old wooden box and furiously throw in a yellowing book, an azure blade and a dark, dull half-foot-long rune brush, before handing the box over to the stunned Lin Sun. Even today, Lin Sun could still remember Mr. Liu's complicated expression: conflicted hatred, helplessness, and an unwillingness to accept something. However, it ultimately turned into a solemn seriousness. Lin Sun had never seen such intensity before and knew he would never forget this sight for as long as he lived. Mr. Liu then tightly grasped Lin Sun's shoulders, making him feel as if his bones were about to be crushed, and said, "From today, you shall learn how to be independent. Hence, you must make sure that you live on." Mr. Liu's hoarse voice overflowed with an unshakable determination. His eyes were blood-red and filled with madness that only appeared when a person knew his death was coming. "Remember, it was not easy for me to save you. So you absolutely cannot die." Mr. Liu then pointed towards the yellowing book and dark gray rune brush and stated in a voice that held a serious tone that Lin Sun had never heard before, "Safeguard them well. The success of your future cultivation will depend on them. Especially the brush. I have failed to uncover the secret within it, but if you manage to, you'll be able to defy the heavens and change destiny even after losing your origin eth artery. Haven't you always wanted to know who stole your origin eth artery? I can tell you that the answer lies in the Xiao Empire. So live on and search for the answer. Don't ever forget." Mr. Liu's voice turned hysterical. His expression warped and distorted. Overwhelmed, Lin Sun could only instinctively nod his head. Mr. Liu grabbed Lin Sun's frail body, violently dragging him to a dark, concealed passageway that he had never seen before. "Go." The dark passageway was akin to a bottomless abyss. Mr. Liu pushed Lin Sun in without any hesitation. Lin Sun was unable to even react, his mind turning blank as he felt as if he was falling from a cliff. It was also in that instant that he saw an ancient hand tear apart the darkness of the mine prison, accompanied by a loud rumbling as it descended. The hand was so enormous that it could cover the sky, every finger akin to a pillar supporting the heavens and each groove akin to a deep gorge. The hand was surrounded by terrifying purple flames and resembled a purple sea of fire pouring down from outer space. It was filled with dreadful destructive power that could incinerate darkness itself and burn the skies. Never in Lin Sun's wildest dreams would he have imagined that someone's hand could cover the sky. One both are spelled Wen Dao in pinyin with slightly different pronunciations. The Prodigies War. Chapter 5: Cultivation Stages. A giant hand that could cover the sky with purple fire that could destroy the world. Chaos descended upon Lin Sun's horrified mind as his thin body violently shuddered and his fingers dug into his palms. That scene had been so overwhelming and dazzling. A single hand that could envelop the sky itself. Pulsing with almighty power that could destroy the world. Lin Sun had been shaken to the core. He never knew that such power could exist in this world. It was practically akin to a god of legends descending upon the mortal realm. A being of miraculous and immeasurable power. Who could easily pluck the stars from the sky and refine the mighty seas. The day will come where I will be able to do so as well. For sure. Lin Sun took a deep breath as determination burned in his heart. Power was what he currently lacked the most. He desired it beyond measure. While growing up in the dark, sunless, mine prison, he had been told that his origin eth artery had been stolen. This caused Lin Sun to have an unusually strong attachment and deep thirst for power. It took a long time before Lin Sun was finally able to calm his raging emotions. He gazed at the yellowing leather book on the desk as a complicated look flitted across his eyes. After being pushed by Mr. Liu into the abyss-like passage, all Lin Sun heard was a deafening boom before losing consciousness. When he awakened, he discovered that he had appeared in some deserted black plains. He subsequently spent 3 months trekking through the mountains and was forced to camp in the wilderness. He experienced numerous difficulties and dangers before finally arriving in the Xiao Empire's territory. Although remote, Feiyun village was considered a part of the Xiao Empire. Lin Sun still remembered Mr. Liu's final words: the one who had stolen his origin eth artery was in the Xiao Empire. Lin Sun gently touched the book with a finger as he took a deep breath to compose himself. He stood up and carefully placed the yellowing leather book back into the old wooden box. The book and brush had been hastily thrust upon him by Mr. Liu in their final moments. This indicated that they were his most valued possessions. Lin Sun could still clearly remember how serious Mr. Liu had been when he had instructed, "Safeguard them well. The success of your future cultivation will depend on them. Especially the brush. I have failed to uncover the secret within it, but if you manage to, you'll be able to defy the heavens and change destiny even after losing your origin eth artery." Lin Sun did not know what kind of earth-shaking secret the book and brush held, nor did he wish to dwell on such things before properly ascertaining Mr. Liu's fate. After blowing out the oil lamp, Lin Sun climbed onto the bed and began to cultivate in a cross-legged sitting posture. Cuckoo. Qi circulated in his body like water flowing along a creek, bringing with it wisps of eth power through the channels of his body. Cultivation thrived in the current era, giving rise to countless schools and inheritances. The sheer number of cultivation-related texts could fill the seas, and there were too many for any one individual to count in their lifetime. One's cultivation progress was divided into 5 greater cultivation stages. The true martial stage, the spirit dipper stage, the spirit sea stage, the heaven ascension stage, and the cyclic derivation stage. The true martial stage was the cornerstone of cultivation. Although there were many people in the world, it did not mean that just anyone could cultivate. The only criterion for cultivation was the ability to step into true martial stage. This was the most basic and most important condition. True martial stage was further categorized into 9 layers. Qi drawing, inner strengthening, organ opening, orifice unlocking, essence refining, blood igniting, little cycle, big cycle, and eth transformation. Every layer represented a complete transformation of one's power. For example, the first layer, Qi drawing, consisted of using qi to draw eth power through the meridian channels with the aim of slowly washing away the mortal impurities of the body. After reaching this stage, a cultivator's impurities would be cleansed and purified. This made the person's flesh rich in vitality, bestowing the cultivator with the strength to split rocks and fight tigers. There was a common saying that everyone knew. Reaching qi drawing is akin to opening the door to cultivation and is the first step into true martial stage. Whether or not a person succeeded in crossing the doorway was a mark of whether that person could become a cultivator. After all, if someone couldn't even reach qi drawing, how could they possibly become a cultivator? Such an individual could only stay as an ordinary person, unable to become a practitioner that could fly in the sky, tunnel through the ground and summon wind and rain. Lin Sun first came into contact with cultivation at the age of 10. When Mr. Liu imparted to him a cultivation method called Yuan holding art. The art focused on eliminating unnecessary thoughts to allow one to proceed with a calm and clear state of mind. At the age of 11, Lin Sun successfully stepped into qi drawing layer. He drew qi into his body to wash away his impurities, becoming a full-fledged cultivator. Lin Sun was currently 13 years old, but his cultivation had only recently broken through qi drawing to reach the second layer true martial stage, the inner strengthening layer. Inner strengthening consisted of using a special technique to breathe eth power, directing it to temper the inner organs and strengthen the qi senses. At this level, a cultivator would be able to breathe in like a cow, and their exhaled breaths would become akin to an arrow, giving the cultivator the ability to keep moving for extended periods. Lin Sun had been stuck at inner strengthening for 2 years. Compared to others, Lin Sun's cultivation progress was not too terrible, but it could only be described as ordinary. He was far from being able to match the super-talented geniuses. However, Lin Sun understood that it was already a miracle he could cultivate after the terrible misfortune of losing his origin eth artery. Naturally, Mr. Liu played no small part in this. Gurgle. Eth power galloped in Lin Sun's body. It circulated for 18 cycles before Lin Sun finally felt he had approached his limit. Phew! Lin Sun immediately stopped and spat out a breath of white qi shaped like an arrow. The qi managed to travel 3 feet, creating a tiny ripple in the air. The qi drawing layer is considered complete once one is able to circulate eth power 9 times around the body. For the inner strengthening layer, one needs to reach 18 cycles before attempting to ascend to the 3rd layer. Organ opening. Lin Sun had already become capable of 18 eth power cycles a year ago. However, he ended up stuck at this step for a year. There were many reasons why. For instance, he lacked eth power-rich foods that were necessary to supplement one's cultivation, money to buy cultivation resources, proper guidance, etc. After all, Lin Sun was an orphan that had grown up in a dark, sunless mine prison. It was already a miracle he had managed to survive, and there was naturally no way he could match up to others. Most importantly, Lin Sun's channels were weak and were unable to bear too heavy a burden. He would only be able to advance to the next cultivation layer if he somehow managed to strengthen his channels substantially. However, Lin Sun did not feel frustrated or impatient. Due to his unique childhood environment, he had long cultivated a freakish amount of patience and willpower. The oldest and most veteran prisoner had once said to survive in that dark mountain prison, one must first learn to patiently endure in silence. It was a saying Lin Sun kept close to his heart. The next morning, Lin soon woke up before daybreak by reflex. He was initially somewhat stunned by the unfamiliar environment, but soon regained his bearings. This was no longer the all-too-familiar mine prison. Due to the habits he had built up over the years, Lin Sun did not feel even the slightest bit sleepy and hurriedly rose from the bed. This was Feiyun village, his first stop in the Xiao Empire. What he needed to do now was to become part of the village as soon as possible. To do this, he needed to show his value. He needed to do something similar to what he had done the night before. If his light drawing rune hadn't successfully solved Tai Shan's worm problem, Lin Sun would not have been accepted so easily by village chief Xiao Tianrun. This was value. Lin Sun believed that after yesterday's event, the villagers would at least no longer be so resistant towards an outsider like himself. After rising from the bed, Lin Sun stretched a little before proceeding to wash up. However, he was interrupted by a strange noise outside the room. Unable to hold back his curiosity, he pushed open the doors to investigate. What he saw were several figures gathered in the weed-filled yard outside.